What's going on, everyone, and welcome to Method in the Madness. This is the podcast that not only delves deep into design and creativity, but also leadership, productivity, and personal development. And we are at episode 23, and my next guest on the show is CEO and co founder of Working Not Working, Justin Gignac. And for those that don't know, Working Not Working is a curated global community connecting the world's best creative talent with the most innovative companies such as Airbnb, Nike, Google, Apple, Wyden and Kennedy, all the big names. And I can tell you that this episode could have easily been a few hours long. I had such a blast kind of chatting to Justin. But Justin tells us a little bit about his personal creative journey that has led him to start Working Not Working, as well as tell us some of the brilliant stories behind some of his more famous previous work like elfyourself.com and NYC Garbage, a personal project of his that I'm sure many of you are aware of. Justin and I also have a great rant about the state of the creative industry today and also kind of what needs to change. So it was a great episode to kind of dive into. So without much further ado, please welcome Justin Gignac to Method in the Madness. Justin, thank you very much for coming on the show. How are things going in New York during this difficult time?
Going as best as they can, trying to make the most of each day and, having fun where we can. But yeah, it's weird, but trying to make the best of it.
Yeah, we're the same over here in Bonnie, Scotland as well. Just to give the listeners a bit of a background about yourself, you are the co-founder of Working Not Working, which is a global community of basically the best creative talent you can get that companies like Apple and Google and Wyden and Kennedy and Nike and all these other amazing brands use to basically staff their creative teams. But prior to that, you are, I don't know what the tense is there, an award-winning art director and creative director at some of the biggest ad agencies around the United States. And you're also perhaps best known for helping create elfyourself.com, which is a personal favorite of my internet history, as well as your art projects like New York City Garbage and Once for Sale and Needs for Sale. So I don't think we're going to have we're going to have plenty to talk about. Put it that way. But in terms of like rewinding, I always like to go back to the beginning. How did you find yourself like in the creative industry? Was it one of these things you kind of fumbled into, or did you know at a young age what you kind of wanted to do?
Well, I knew as a kid, I had always been creative and was into art. And my stepfather, George, was very, he was very blue collar and poured concrete sidewalks and was a garbage man and did all these various, tough manual labor jobs. And I remember one day we were sitting in the parking lot of a local grocery store waiting for my mom to come out. And he said to me, he's like, you should use your brain, not your hands. And I was like, okay, thanks. And he's like, well,
That
you really love those commercials. And I used to record on, VHS tape, the Clio Awards when they used to be on TV,
mm,
of all the commercials. And I just was always fascinated with the commercials. He's like, you should go into advertising and make TV commercials. And it was like a mind blowing moment because I didn't know if people actually did that. You just assume they show up on your TV. And
yeah,
so
totally.
that was when I was 11 years old, and ever since that point, I was like, all right, when I grow up, I'm gonna make TV commercials. And I went to a really great public high school that had a great art program, and I ended up getting to School of Visual Arts in New York City, and they had advertising as a major, and then I just kind of ran with it from there.
Wow, like it's kind of like it's funny you say that obviously you know use your brain, not your hands. And it's kind of been the same thing in my family that I've said on this podcast many times. Like both my dad and my brother work in the offshore industry and are very practical
Hmm.
in that sense of thing.
Practical
And
and calloused. Yeah.
yeah. The unfortunate thing for me, I like he just kind of calls it coloring in for a living. So I don't think he was really saying use your brain. That's a bit of a stretch for my dad, but Very, very kind of similar story. You'd be surprised at how many people say the same thing when they come on the podcast as
Oh, for
well.
sure. Well, it was just nice that he was the one who saw it though, and even though it wasn't his field, he saw my interest in it and encouraged it, and it definitely set me down this path.
Yeah, yeah. So did you kind of just like jump straight into ad agencies from your college then?
Yeah, I got hired, and it was a weird time to get a job. My senior year of college was yeah, it started in September of 2001. So
Mm,
the first week at back to
Jesus.
school was 9/11, and trying to get a job that June was not an easy thing. And I was very fortunate that one of my classmates, her dad worked at or ran Ogilvy, and at least was she was willing to put my name in front of the recruiter,
Mm.
and so that got me in the door and at least considered. And then I obviously got the job on my own merits after that, but it was. They had a program called the Young Guns, and it was their way of getting kind of young creatives to want to work at a big, stodgy, old ad agency. And so
Yeah.
I very fortunately got hired in June, and when not a lot of people were getting hired, and had that job for a year and a half. And then my first commercial I did with Muhammad Ali
Oh,
and
wow.
Penny Marshall and all these other amazing people. It was like the most ridiculous shoot, and it was like a $1.2 million budget for my first shoot when I was like 22 years old, which I'd never had. I don't know if I've ever had a budget for a commercial a quarter of that since. And
Yeah, I
so
was about to
yeah,
say they don't have budgets like that anymore, that's for certain.
no, and so that was like my induction into the business or introduction to the business. And then I was there for about a year and a half, and I went to an agency called Fallon, New York, and we were
Mm.
only a creative department about 8 to 10 people, and managed to end up being like the third most awarded agency in the U.S. My last year there,
Wow.
and then the creative director and president decided to leave to start their own agency, and they decided to shut the agency down with them leaving, which was really sad.
Yeah, God.
And we were like, well, we could keep doing this. We don't really need them.
Mm.
We can figure this out. And it was a 35-person agency they just shut down, and it's just unfortunate. Which I think they've reopened it since. But I went with Ari and Ann, Ari Merkin and Ann Bologna, who left to start their own agency, Toy. I was their first hire over there as first creative hire, and helped them start that. And it was like a
Oh,
four-person
wow.
agency, and that's where we did Office Max campaign and Elf Yourself and all of that.
Yeah, wow. So but, like it's just very blasé, just throw things like that in there when there's huge things. Having both like worked at obviously large ad agencies like Ogilvy to where you are now, where you've co-founded Working Not Working. Like, what's the experience been like working on both sides of the table, where you're working for someone and a company, and you're an employee to running your own business?
Yeah, it's completely different. Fucking amazingly different. Yeah. Well, I got out of advertising because I'd been in it full time for 5 years. The Office Max campaign, where we did 20 websites, and
Mm,
we did them all in 8 weeks with like 8 different interactive agencies. I was working like legitimately
Jesus.
18 to 20-hour days, 7 days a
I
week
was
for
about
two
to
straight
say
months.
that's making my blood pressure rise just thinking
Yeah,
about it.
and for me, it was just like I didn't I was burnt out a bit then, and I had a ton of side projects, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But
Mm,
I wanted to pursue those, and I didn't have the time to do that, and I didn't have the bandwidth to do that, and I got really frustrated, and less so at the smaller agencies because we actually were there was no layers, we just made shit. But with the bigger agencies, it was like I spent a lot of ideas or a lot of time coming up with ideas, presenting ideas, focus grouping ideas, and killing ideas, and not enough time actually making them. So
yeah.
it was always this pipe dream, and you slaved over everything, you sacrificed your life for it, and missed birthdays and holidays and all these important life moments for the hope of one day getting to produce something that you're proud of and maybe win an award with it.
Yeah.
And so it was like all of this sacrifice for very few moments of validation. And so I would rather come up with ideas that make me millions of dollars rather than a holding company and a brand. And I think like advertising is a great boot camp for 5 years. So you learn how to get past the good ideas to the great ideas. You learn how to actually make things, and you come up with a network of people who you can collaborate with, you can encourage, you can learn from, and those people stay with you the rest of your life. And so
Mm.
once you have those things checked off and you have those skills in that community, you really are empowered to do whatever you want. Like I can come up with an idea on a Friday, make the website over the weekend and launch it on Monday and have it be viral by Wednesday. And
Yeah.
so I don't need permission to make stuff that gets me excited. And so I was really excited to go and do my own thing, pursue my own independent projects, and then also be in control of my career and get to work with people and work on things that I really wanted to work on. And so I went freelance. Working Not Working came 7 years after that. But going from the advertising world where good is the enemy of great to the
Yeah.
product design world where great is the enemy of good is just like such a switch, because we would, especially if there are microsites for campaigns coming out, we would like pixel fuck the hell out of it, and everything had to be perfect,
Yeah, of
which is
course.
like, just feeds into my perfectionism and control freakness. And then with the product world, when you're actually making a product, it's like, no, we got to get an MVP out. Like, what's the
Yeah.
MVP and how do we iterate? And I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? It's a polar opposite mindset. And so
Yeah.
I have gotten to the point where I miss making things, and that's something we're started doing in the past year or so, is making things for our own brand and collaborating with as much, many members of Working Out Working as possible, to put things out into the world. But I did for a long time miss making stuff, because there was just putting a website out and updating that, sure, but I missed like kind of the creative things, and things you could touch and put out into the world.
Yeah, totally. It's really like what you're saying there about like your kind of time in the ad world kind of I really resonate with. Like I've up until January this year basically worked in like digital agencies for the
Hmm.
past 10 years. And like having now moved to kind of product design, I kind of like it was one of these things that I think I was kind of in denial about wanting to make the switch for so long.
Hmm.
And then it was just like one of these things where you actually stop and think, and you're just like, I'm really kind of not enjoying like the way the industry even works now. Like back when I first started doing it, like, everything was about like, as you say, the great idea, and you make that great idea, make it become something. But then it was just like every single budget is slashed.
Hmm.
So you're like, you're pitching for a 300 grand job. You're actually like selling yourself short because it should probably be about 500,000. So you're already taking a hit on that. You spent so much to even do the pitch, and then like by the time it actually goes live or whatever it may be, it's such a kind of boiled down, boring version of what you originally had planned. It's not even really that you gets you excited anymore.
Yeah.
Um, and I always find like, even clients, like they're not even that excited. They just kind of want to tick a box and kind of get something over and done with. It's not really about actually doing anything kind of meaningful anymore. And I could completely fucking fell out of love with the pitching and the whole
Yeah, of
process of
course.
it. But it was like one of these things I'd probably fallen out of love with it a long time ago, but I probably just hadn't really realized it yet.
Yeah.
And then
Well, it's like,
it
how
just like,
often do we go and stop and think if we're actually happy right now?
yeah, exactly. And it was just I got to the point where I was just like, you know what? I don't think I'm gonna fucking miss agencies. Like
Well,
I'm so done.
and I guess the counter to that is like, it doesn't have to be that way. Like,
No.
like, because we can go and whine about like shrinking budgets, but like for us as creatives, like our like creative merit is based on how willing we can like kind of draw ourselves out of a box and work within those constraints and those parameters. And but you need to be set up in an environment where they encourage that. You have to be set up in an environment where they're not going to beat you down and exhaust you with pitch after pitch after pitch, where they value
Mm,
their own intellectual property and they're not just giving it away to whoever the fuck wants it, because they're acting from a scarcity mindset instead of a mindset of abundance. And it's like, when I came out of school, ad agencies were the only place to be creative and to make creative ideas and get paid to be a
yeah.
weirdo, right? And it's like, they don't have the monopoly on that anymore of opportunity, yet they're still behaving as if they do.
Yeah.
And so there's still agencies that are doing amazing work, like the Widens of the world are still doing amazing work, and there's a lot of small studios that are saying, "Hey, we don't pitch, but we're just going to make shit that we're excited about," and they're thriving because they go and put work out that is them, instead of just going like, "All right, let's take the orders of what the client wants and just schlep out shit that nobody cares about,"
Yeah,
and then they and then they
100%.
have they have no idea why they can't win new business. It's because you have like no soul, like you focus grouped and A and R'd and pitch yourself out of a creative soul, And so of course nobody is going to be attracted to you because you're just like this desperate entity that is just putting out work with no heart. So
Yeah.
of course you're becoming irrelevant, and of course you're going to have to pitch and give ideas away for free because you're not desirable anymore. And so, I think what's going on right now is accelerating a shift that was already happening. Because you had
Mm.
so many people holding on to how it used to be and then whining about it. Um, and I think this is going to be the thing that like tears the big agency model and the holding companies down to the ground, and then probably for that's going to be a good thing. And then
Yep.
it's almost like how a forest fire is part of the life cycle of a forest. Like the forest fire happens, it gets everything down, clears everything out. All of the seeds come off the trees and all that, and then it replants and regrows the forest from that. And I think that's where we're at right now. We're in the middle of the forest fire, and the creative industry needs a bit of a rebirth and a reprioritization. And this might be the thing that's making it happen now instead of 5 or 6 years from now.
Yeah, absolutely. It was just like, it was one of these moments kind of near the end of last year where you just realize it's like kind of like you were saying, like the big guys, like the Widens and stuff, doing amazing work, and the kind of small consultancies doing amazing work. It's just the bit in the middle that you're just like, you're coming under pressure from the kind of gig economy, you're coming under pressure from people taking things in house, and you know this is happening and you talk about it happening, but you're not actually doing anything to remedy the situation. You're just kind of hoping that it'll all
And go
go
back,
away, and
yeah, and go back
and
to
then
normal, and it's not. And so stop holding on to it. And so that's what, like, it gets frustrating to watch because I have so many friends in this industry, and
mm,
they're not being given the opportunities to do their best work. They're not being given the ability to shine because there's just people are holding onto a thing that doesn't exist anymore, and saying, instead of saying, well, what the fuck's the new thing, and let's just go and make work that we're really psyched about, even if it's just for ourselves, and it'll attract new business to us for people who want to do work like that. Because like the thing we do is in more demand than ever.
mm,
There's a cultural, and within businesses, like creative is being welcomed into the C-suite. It's because of companies like Apple and
yeah,
Airbnb, and like all in these companies that are embracing design and embracing creativity, that are succeeding. And it's all the direct to consumer brands that we see, the Warby Parkers of the world. Everybody's trying to be like them. and,
totally.
and so like the, we're more valuable than ever, yet we're selling ourselves short, and there's more content being created than ever. And so there's a need for what we do as storytellers and brand builders, yet somehow there's this mindset that like all the work's going away, and it's like that's absurd. The fact that like my mom went and didn't like her new phone because she missed the UX of her old phone,
Yeah.
and traded it back in to get another iPhone. It's just crazy that my mom now is like has a discerning taste for user experience.
Yeah,
And
totally.
that's what's happening across the board. And so like I'm very hopeful for what we do. I just think the people who aren't evolving with it and aren't going after it and making the shit they really want to be making to then attract more business that's like that, and more like-minded people and planting flags. Like you look at the mission statements of like the top 50 ad agencies, and you put them on the
Mm.
wall and you white out their names, and it's like you couldn't tell any of them apart.
Totally.
And that's a huge
Yeah.
problem, that people that are so good at branding other people and other companies are usually
They're
pretty terrible at
terrible
branding
at doing
themselves.
themselves.
Like they should all just hire each other to brand themselves. But
Yeah.
but it is a thing, and it's what we're going through now as individuals, and we find that with freelancers too. Generally
Mm.
pretty bad at branding themselves, and so what can we do to help people position themselves better and really set themselves up for when kind of commerce gets turned back on, to be in the best position to get that work that's inevitably going to be coming on the other side of this.
Yeah, absolutely. Um,
Sorry, I go on rants.
no,
I stood up in the
like,
middle of that and started pacing around my living room because it's just like, well, it gets really frustrating to me just seeing people unhappy. And so for me, it's like
yeah,
I want to see people like loving what they're doing, and making amazing work that makes me jealous. And there's not enough of that happening.
yeah. It's that, and I think I'm a perfect example of that because I was probably a bit like not against the whole in-house thing. I totally understood why companies were doing it. It made a total sense. I think it was just like I really enjoyed the whole pitch process. The kind of that's the kind of moment that you know had to rise to shine and all this kind of stuff. But it just totally beats you down after a while. And I was just like, you know what, I like. if I keep holding on to this like impossible thing, I'm just going to be kind of swept away, and I won't have a job.
Well, I think that's like
Which is
it, and people get so beaten down by that process, especially if you're not winning all of them. But it's an unnecessary process because it doesn't actually lead to better work. Like people go
Mm,
and pitch to cover their ass, and they pitch to go and say, "All right, I did everything I could so that when we hire these people and actually pay them real money, it's going to be successful." But it's not the case because like all you need to do is just treat your agencies like freelancers. Look at their portfolio. Do they have work that you like and you would like to do work similar? Do you
mm,
talk to the people? Do they understand you? You have a couple meetings, you have a couple conversations, you can talk strategy, sure. And then you give them a project and you see how they do. And if it
yeah,
does well, you give them another project and another, and then all of a sudden you're just working with them for a year and you're spending all this money on project by project. Then you're like, hey, maybe we should switch to a retainer. This is really working out for all of us. And otherwise, if they don't do well, you just hire someone else. But we don't need to spend 2 months, 3 months, 6 months pitching new business. And we also
yeah,
that's a luxury that in this world after this we don't have anymore. We have to get to work.
mm,
And so I'm hoping this is the thing that does away with pitches because
yeah, yeah.
it's a
I
waste of
hope
time and
so.
money. It's like it's wasting everyone's time and money instead of actually getting to work. And I don't know if I can just start rallying people to agree to not pitch, but uh,
Hear me roar.
because it's not healthy and it's not good. And when you're pitching, you're coming from a point of disadvantage anyway. And I've talked to many friends who are just like told brands like Nike that they're not going to pitch it, and then 2 weeks later Nike's like, well, we want to give you this project. And it's like, and that's the whole thing. There's a guy, there's a website, Win Without Pitching. I think it's .com,
Yeah,
Blair Ennis, and his whole thing is like you have to change the dynamics of the pitch. And if you say, "Hey, I can't come to you. Can you guys come to us?" and they say no, then you probably weren't going to win the pitch anyway.
yeah,
But
yeah.
if
I,
they're
I
willing to
can't.
change the rules, then they're like they want you more than you want them.
Yeah. I can't speak obviously for the States, but certainly in Scotland, it's obviously a very small creative market,
Hmm.
being a very small country. But like, it's just basically cheapest person won anyway, 9 times out of 10. Like, if you're the cheapest person on the out of the five agencies pitching, you probably got the project because
That's so depressing.
everyone was coming, everyone was coming under strain, and even with agencies, it was like all the kind of larger agencies. I'm not talking about like the kind of independent small places that are still doing really interesting work, but like some of the really kind of big notable ones, they all had a bank or something that
Hmm.
were
Cut
you
the
know
lights on.
kept the lights on, and then it was like the fun brands that everyone was like oohing and eyeing over, the brands that your mum and dad would know about. It's like actually, oh, they're the projects where you're doing like 15 grand, 20 grand projects, which is actually costing way more than that. But
Yeah.
you know but the thing is now, like all the big financial services brands, they had enough money to take everything in house. They were the first people to adopt that because
Mm.
they've got so they don't need you anymore, so they're no longer keeping your lights on, and then you're fucked. So
Mm.
so
I
that was my personal experience
Well,
anyway.
and I think that's probably a good thing. It's like, cool. How do we adapt? How do we adapt
Yeah.
and still make great? It probably is that a lot of agencies aren't doing great work for those big financial brands. So it's like this like chain that's been around their neck holding them down. And maybe with the freedom and the flexibility of not having all of your revenue or most of your revenue tied to one client is probably a really
Mm,
good thing. And it's
yeah.
like, cool. You don't have to be in this fearful mindset of like, oh my God, we have to keep this client so happy and we have to do whatever they say. And then they treat us all like, like shit. Yet we still tolerate it because we need to keep, half our company employed. And like
Yeah.
maybe that's a freedom that's kind of nice to escape.
Yeah. With working, not working, what was the kind of turning point for you, or like you and your kind of co-founders, that was like, this is the time to set this thing up? Like what were the steps that kind of influenced that decision that eventually
Yeah.
became?
So I had been freelancing for 7 years as an art director and creative director around the US.
Mm,
And it was a pain in the ass to find gigs. Whenever I wanted a gig, I would call and email every single person I knew in the industry, which wasn't very many because I'd only had 3 jobs for 5 years. And nobody ever needs an art director the second I need a job, right? Or at least when I was calling them. And so I wouldn't get any gigs for like 2 weeks, and then I would get booked. And then inevitably I get called for 5 more jobs that I couldn't take. And
Yeah.
it's like, this is stupid. And on the other side, the recruiters would just go and call and email every single person in their, Google spreadsheet or their Excel spreadsheet and say, hey, are you available for this job? And of course, like that's one only probably 75% accurate of who's still freelancing or whatever. And then no one's ever available. So then they would run around the creative department asking every creative, like, are any of your friends available? So then they're just getting like a warm body. And if they got really desperate, they would like hit up a headhunter and pay anywhere from a 15% to 120% markup on the talent,
Y-
which
Yeah.
which is not great, because like if I ever got a job through a headhunter, they were willing to pay that fee the first time. They have a 12-month contract with a headhunter. They're willing to pay that fee for the duration of the project, a couple of weeks or a month, because they were desperate. Then they're not hiring me afterward because they don't want to pay that markup. So then I don't get to work where I want to work. They don't get the creative they want, and so it's like bad for the work and bad for everyone. And
Yeah.
so when I was like, well, what if I just did like a motel vacancy sign and put it on my website? And so I created this giant blinking neon animated GIF that was like the full size of my website. And it said, Justin is available, Justin's working, or Justin's available soon. And I called it the Justin Gignac freelance status apparatus. And I had
Nice.
an overutilization of technology to follow my availability. So I had a Facebook group, a Twitter feed, a text alert, an iPhone app, and a mailing list.
Wow.
And I ended up with 40 different recruiters from different agencies following me. And every time I'd flip my status to available and notify them, I'd get 2 or 3 job offers within a day. And any
Holy
jobs I
shit.
couldn't take, I would email to my art director friends, which people were like, oh, that's so cool. And I'm like, what's cool? And they're like, it's cool that you share your contacts. And I'm like, of course I'd share my contacts. Like, there's enough work to go around. And I'm like, not worried that if I go and introduce them to another talented art director friend of mine, that they're never going to call me again. And
Yeah, exactly.
and the opposite actually happened, where like people would go, Justin, I see you're working, for any of your friends available. So I started getting first dibs on all of the jobs because they would come to me first. And so that was working really well for me. I did, had that for a couple of years. And then my friend Adam Tompkins, who we had started our first jobs at Ogilvy together in their little Young Guns program, he was working on his own startup trying to find freelance developers, and was super frustrated trying to find anybody that could do it, right? And anybody that could do it
Mm.
would be willing to work with the existing code base and all of that. And
Mm.
so we were talking one day and figured if that vacancy sign could work for me, it probably could work for everybody. And so we quickly wireframed it. We found some studios to design, develop it, and then we launched it 6 months later in January of 2012 with 300 of the best freelancers we knew. And it was all like, wanted to make sure it was curated and make sure the best talent was on, because we knew the types of companies we were working at and their expectation of who they were hiring.
Yeah, of course.
And so we started that, and it's just grown from there.
Wow. And is it still curated to this day? Because I can imagine if not, it would be getting abused.
Yeah, well, so when we first started, like everybody had to be like approved by us, and for the first 3 years, it was just Adam and I doing everything besides design development. So we were doing sales and going to the agencies, we were vetting the talent,
Wow.
we were writing the copy, throwing the parties, all of this stuff, and we were also freelancing at the same time. And so we finally were able to hire some people, so we were able to get more people on. But even then, it's like we got up, let's see, 2017. We relaunched the site in January, and at that point, we had 7,500 creatives on the platform that were all vetted, and then we had 8,000 people in the queue waiting to be vetted. And it would take 6 to 12 months to get a response because the queue was so long.
Yeah.
And so we're like, that sucks. And also, like at the time, people, if they got on the site and then took a full time job, we would kick them off because it was only for freelancers, and we didn't want them taking jobs from people who were relying on freelance to pay the bills. And we're
Yeah.
like, well, that's a shitty user experience. Like they waited all this time to get on, and then we helped them get work, and we were like, all right, get the fuck out of here.
Congratulations on your new job.
Yeah,
Bye.
exactly. And so we were like, okay, let's not do that. So we added a full time status so people could just switch over to that, and we can get full timers on. But when we relaunched in 3 years ago, we made it so those people who were in the queue could actually make profiles, and so they could be discovered. They could go and apply for jobs and be hired as well, because there were some amazing people in there. They just hadn't been vetted yet. So now we have a membership
Mm.
board of about 400 of the best creatives on the platform and in the industry, and they're the ones vetting um, the other talent. So illustrators are vetting illustrators,
Ah,
creative directors are vetting creative directors, and only about 10 to 15% of people who apply or are on the platform get that like kind of vetted member badge on their profile.
yeah.
But everyone still has access to the opportunities. So the hires could choose to only search for vetted members, or they could search for everyone on the platform, which most people do, because they
Mm.
want to be able to find out their own diamonds in the rough. So now a lot more people around. We have about 80,000 creatives around the world,
Wow.
uh,
Jesus.
but about a little less than 15,000 are vetted members.
Wow. That's so cool.
Thanks.
Like, and it's just the fact that it's like, it's kind of grown a life of its own, and people are vetting other people now and kind of completely taking a load off your
Yeah.
to-do list.
Well, and also like yeah, it makes people blame Adam and I a lot less. We're just like, oh, we don't do it because that sucked. It sucks like telling people like, hey, your portfolio isn't where our
Up to
clients want
scratch.
it, and
Mm.
we would see like people would get super pissed, or people would be like, Google me, and it's like that's
Mm.
not how the internet works. You put no effort into your profile. You put one JPEG up when you could put six projects up, and you're
Yeah.
just like Google me, and it's like nobody has time to do that shit now. And so
Yeah.
like get over yourself and actually represent yourself well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is hard because like you have to like we're basically educating people on how to be like decent humans in the internet age. But it's you can't rely on your reputation anymore. You can't rely on you can get referrals and word of mouth and all that, but when people are looking at you, whether it's your portfolio site or on LinkedIn or anywhere else, it's like you've got to put your best foot forward. And if you're not willing to put the effort in to make it easier for me to understand who you are and what you do, then I'm just going to go to the next person.
Mm. And like, has it gotten because like when you first go on to working, not working, like even from just like a brief look, you can see like the level of talent that's on there. Like, have you seen like you know, normally you'd probably things that like if that was just like an open open application, it'd probably be getting abused by people from Fiverr.com and things like that.
Mm.
But like, do you actually find that the talent coming in is actually just now kind of sustaining it at like high level because people are going on and going like, well, I don't obviously fucking deserve to be on here, so I'm not at that level yet, or do you
Well,
still get some pretty awful?
luckily people are aspiring to be at that level. So, they are signing up. But yeah, there's insanely talented people still joining because their friends like, oh shit, I got this job at Nike. I'm working, not working. Like, oh, let me sign up for that.
Mm,
And so the word of mouth aspect has been really strong and still getting amazing talent. And our team is like always looking for new talent to invite to the platform too. So, it's a combination of both. But yeah, there's like some insanely good people, especially like right now we have a bunch of graduates getting on, which is awesome because they're like we always said we want the current all stars or the future all stars, and so hopefully everyone can fall into that because we can all better ourselves and all make our work better and our our craft better. So I think everyone has the potential to get to that level of being a vetted member at some point.
yeah, totally. Like, what have been some of the kind of proudest working, not working moments, other than obviously it actually being a thing?
Yeah. Well, and it's funny because Adam and I joke, we are like, when we started, we just thought it'd be like the best thing in our book and allow us to get jobs. And it's actually turned into a legitimate business. And, we're still a small team. We're still only about, I think 9 or 10 full time, and
Oh
a couple
wow!
freelancers. So we're not huge. Um, but for me, the proudest I've been has been the past 6 weeks. Like our team, as
Oh
soon as
yeah.
this wall went down, we started working from home, like stepped the fuck up in a huge way and just had this like nether gear that I just didn't know we had and didn't expect. And they're just like whatever we can do to help. And so our talent team was like emailed all the creatives and said, hey, if you just want to talk to somebody for 15 minutes about like what's going on or your career or your portfolio or you have any questions, we're here. And they got like 300 emails in a couple days and have been doing these one-on-one calls with people and just like taking the time. And we started doing events every day, virtual events. Started working on updates to the site and the platform to be able to make it easier for people to work during these times and represent themselves better. And so like everything has just been like cooking, and it's been really great to see. And I think people are really proud of what we're doing and doing to help the community and help people through this. So I've been like insanely proud every day coming to work.
Yeah, it's one thing like I've noticed like at the moment, just like from things you read on whether it's LinkedIn or whatever, but like yeah, what we're experiencing at the moment is awful, like situation to kind of be in. Not like especially for the creative industry, but like especially for freelancers and stuff
Hmm.
like that. But just small businesses, like not the ones that are going to have enough money just to kind of battle through it, I suppose. And like with, I suppose, every downturn or something like that, you do get just like an insane rush of enthusiasm and people that are willing to help and cool ideas coming out of nowhere that probably would never have been born unless this had happened.
Hmm.
So like with every kind of it's like the yin and yang thing. With every kind of bad thing, there's always a bit of good that kind of comes from it.
Well, like the entire gig economy came out of the last financial crisis. So it's like
Yeah.
Uber and Airbnb were born in what, 2007, 2008. And so,
Mm.
it is this, invention is the, oh God, I forget. Invention is the mother, necessity is the mother of invention. There we go.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we go and we get out of our comfort zone and we get out of the things we take for granted and we go, oh, fuck, what do I do now? And you can, oh fuck, what do I do now? You're yourself into some like cool shit, and
Yeah.
it's not to make light of or you know um, not acknowledge that this is having a huge impact, personally on a lot of people who have either gotten sick or know people that have gotten sick or passed,
Mm.
and then people's businesses that are having a really tough time weathering this storm. So it's not easy, and it's definitely taking its toll. But I think there's opportunity and the people that we surround ourselves with and the the way we look at the problem and can try to come up with some solutions.
Yeah. Absolutely. Um, it would be a bit of a sin not to talk about some of your side projects and other projects. So I'm going to start with elfyourself.com,
Uh-huh.
which if someone told me when I first used elfyourself.com that one day I'd be speaking to somebody on a podcast that actually had a part to play in making it, I'd probably say, "What's a podcast?" But obviously, it was a website, or still is a website, where you can upload your face or friends and family's faces to dancing elves and send it as a Christmas card. And like, I read on your profile that there's been like 1.5 billion elves created
Yeah,
or
I
something
think
like
it's
that.
like, and I forgot to check this year when it's only up for like between Thanksgiving and Christmas, but I think
Hmm.
they were pretty close to 2 billion elves created this
Fucking
year.
hell.
It's insane, and we had,
That is
like, if
mental.
we're gonna be honest, we had no idea that it would actually take off.
Yeah, I don't think anyone plans for like 2 billion people to use your product,
No,
but
no, not at all. Well, that was the thing with Office Max came to us at Toy with, they wanted to get people to go Christmas shopping at an office supply store, which is a dumb idea. Like, why would anybody do that? And so we're like, okay. They're like, well, we have cameras and this and that. Oh, okay, yeah, good point. Sure. And they only had like a few $100,000, which wasn't enough to, like, maybe make one spot, but would that really have any impact? And so we
Hmm.
were like, well, what if we took that budget and made a bunch of websites as like a gift from Office Max to consumers who are like bored at their desk during the holiday season and probably, not fully tuned in to getting work done, and they're probably wanting to go shopping or do other things. So we made 20 different interactive sites, and they were all connected under this little yellow tab on the bottom of each website. If you clicked on that, it expanded and showed you all the other ones.
Hmm.
And we worked with 8 different interactive agencies in 2 months to make all the sites. And it was basically
Jesus.
like career directing feedback on 20 different websites every day, and just like, it was insane. It was an insane experience.
Yeah.
And yeah, I was like taking red eyes back from LA and up the entire time writing feedback, so when we landed and got on Wi-Fi again, I could send it out to all the shops. And it was just like, it was nonstop. But um Elf Yourself was not my favorite. My favorite was roastaturkey.com, where you could, you just gave you an oven with, and it says 10 pound, roast your 10-pound turkey, and you had to put it on bake and then set the temperature. And if you clicked instructions how to, and it would bring you to Google with the search already entered, how do you roast a turkey?
Ah.
And then you just put it in. And whenever you took it out, you got a score on how well you did based on the 10-pound turkey. And if you left it in too long, it started smoking white smoke and then gray smoke and then black smoke, and then you would get a percentage score based on how well.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and so that was like so dumb and fun. And then Elf Yourself just started taking off and started crashing all of the web hosts on crashable servers, they said. And we
Mm.
were getting like, yeah, it was at one point it was like 8 elves created every second. There was
I was about to say, like how quickly, like from pressing the go live button to seeing like such a spike, and like how,
within
because
like
I don't even know
within a
how
few
the
days.
fuck I came across it. Like I don't even know how I discovered it, but like everything back in those days, you
Yeah.
just found it
Well,
somehow
it was
on a
like on
website somewhere.
every blog picked it up, and every like all the news stations and Good Morning America and all these big shows over here were covering it, and everyone was doing it to themselves. And and they had the thing where you could call in at the time and you could record a message as part of it too. And so it just was, this, and it made it high pitched to sound like an elf. And so you could do that. And so it just was like goofy and dumb and fun. And yeah, within like a week, it was blowing up. And we got, I think, in that first, it was only up for 6 weeks, and it was like 93 million visits. And
Oh my
in the
god.
second year, it was like 190 something million visits in 5 weeks. And so yeah, we had no idea, and we were just kind of, holy shit, let's roll with it. you know,
Yeah,
uh,
quite right.
yeah. So it was cool. It was cool to be a part of that and seeing it happen.
Well, I
Definitely.
was about to say, because it's like it's kind of weirdly, if you looked back through like timeline of internet viral history, like that's probably one of the earliest things. Like I'm 32, and that's one of the earliest things I can like remember doing, and then tons of people also sharing it, you know, on whatever, I can't remember. It wasn't Facebook and Twitter back in those days, Bebo and all that kind of
Hmm.
crap. But like, is it weird to kind of think that something that you've done is like part of internet history almost?
Yeah, it's pretty weird. It's surreal. But it was.
Are you gutted it's something called elfyourself.com
Oh
and
no.
not something like really serious?
Oh no. I would be ashamed if I did something that was really serious and successful. It's not my style at all. Like, we'll probably talk about other stuff I've done. I like dumb and fun way more than I like serious. So yeah,
Hmm. So another one that I've been dying to talk about is the New York City Garbage project,
there we go.
which
Yeah,
um talking about, it's not dumb's harsh, like
no,
fun. Let's just stick with fun.
it's pretty dumb. Well, yeah, we'll let people judge
Yeah.
themselves. Sure.
Yeah. So for like, I'm sure everyone's probably aware of this, or if not, it's basically you literally picked up trash off the ground in New York City, put it in a lovely perspex box, and had some lovely typography on the front of it, and sold it to people,
Uh huh.
which is like sits right in the middle of that kind of Venn diagram of kind of crazy and genius at the same time.
I'll take that.
And I was reading an article about it, uh, and you mentioned that like you started the project because someone told you that packaging didn't matter or something like that.
Yeah, I had a
Uh,
yeah, I had a summer internship at MTV my sophomore year, after my sophomore year of college,
cool.
and 2000, yeah, 2000. And we're having a discussion one day about the importance of package design, and someone said package design didn't matter. And I thought that was ridiculous, but figured the only way to prove them wrong would be to package something that nobody would ever want to buy. And then if I can convince them to buy it, then I'll know my package design was successful. And so just staring down into Times Square and looking at how filthy New York is just like, oh yeah, garbage. Like, obviously
Yeah.
people don't want it, they throw it on the ground. And so I sat on the idea for about a year before doing anything
Oh
with it.
wow.
And then I was like, it's one of those ideas just kept perking up in my head and bubbling up. And I was like, all right, I got to do that. And so I went and bought 10 boxes, and I, you know, went and picked up dry garbage off the streets, and I
Hmm.
sealed the lid onto it so it doesn't leak or smell. And then I wanted to make it super collectible, so I put the date on that the garbage is picked, and then I sign and number each one to make it, extra collectible. And I went out into Times
Yeah.
Square in a little cardboard box and hawking, like, wherever you're from, your garbage sucks compared to ours. I, I touch it so you don't have to. And was trying to get people to buy it for $10 a piece. Nobody was buying it. I tried to offer it $5. Nobody was buying it. I was like $5 and a free bad portrait. Nobody was buying it. And then I was out there probably for like 7 hours. It was like 10 o'clock at night. And this older gentleman from Ecuador who didn't really speak English saw it and thought it was funny and paid me $5 for it. And I was like, holy shit, I just sold garbage. And so
Yeah.
the next day I went out with even more enthusiasm and confidence and sold probably three or four more. And then I made a website, and that website pretty quickly took off because I made it and then I sent it to a bunch of press, and then like Time Out
Mm.
New York did a full page article about it, and then it just like went everywhere, and I had the local news stations in my dorm room filming me doing it. And then I would start getting like a newspaper in New York would pick it up, and then their sister newspaper in London would pick it up, and suddenly I'd be doing radio shows in Ireland, in Germany, and I just, as a 21-year-old in college, I saw how ideas go viral, and
Yeah,
and it was like started going everywhere, and went to Korea and went to Japan, and I had people.
that is fucking crazy.
But
That
thanks. And it's like it was just one of those things where like I was doing it in my dorm room, selling for $10 a piece, and then I couldn't keep up with the demand, so I raised the price to $25. And
okay.
then a year later, and it sold just as much. And then a year later, I raised the price. Was working at Ogilvy, and I couldn't keep up with the demand, so doubled the price to $50, and they still kept selling. And
Oh wow.
I did $50 for regular garbage, $100 for limited edition, which was like New Year's Eve at Times
Limited edition.
Square. Yeah, like special events and special occasions. And it's funny because when it was like $10, people thought it was like a funny joke, and when it was $25, people thought it was a cool souvenir, and then when it was $50, people started calling it art.
Uh,
And so it's amazing how you change people's perception of its value by changing the price, which is like what the entire
yeah, yeah,
luxury goods industry does. They like jack up the price, and you're like, this must be good. It's $1,000 for a pair of shoes.
yeah.
Um, and so yeah, I just applied that to trash, and I stopped doing it. I
Jesus
stopped doing it about
Christ.
like 7 years ago, and then Squarespace hit me up in the fall and said they were doing a project with campaign with Oscar the Grouch from Sesame Street, who there's
Oh
been
my
many
God.
headlines that compared me to Oscar the Grouch, and they asked me if I would collaborate with Oscar on making his art, and I was like,
And
absolutely. So
how
I
could you
did that.
not say yes to that
It was
opportunity?
awesome. So I had
Holy
all
shit.
these like official memorabilia and props from Sesame Street in my kitchen, and made I think 25 cubes out of them, and they end up selling them all for the Sesame Street charity. So that was pretty awesome.
Oh,
And I was
awesome.
going to bring it
Awesome.
back. Like I was planning on doing another 100 cubes in the spring when like it got a little bit nicer, and then this is all gone down, which I don't want to go and touch Corona trash. Uh,
No.
but once it gets a little nicer again, I'll give it a go and maybe just do like one run of it, because people have been asking for so long.
Well, it's one of these things where it's just like you could always do it.
Yeah, the thing is, like, I have a very strong gag reflex, and so I gag really easily. And at this point, like, I've already proven I can do it, so I don't really want to be playing around in garbage again. But
No.
just because like so many people have asked, like, well, when can I get one? Can I get? I was like, all right, fine, I'll do like another batch, and then I'll be done for a few more years. Um,
Yeah, until you stomach it again, and
yeah,
then
exactly.
or you're saving up for like a new iMac or something like that. Oh well, sell some more cubes.
Uh huh. Yeah, exactly.
Man, that is absolutely crazy. Like I like were you doing it as, and don't take offense to this if it's the
But clearly, I don't take
like
offense to anything. So yeah.
but like were you doing it as like a serious art project, or was it like to almost like prove and like take the piss out of people's like obsession with New York?
I think it's a little of all of that. Like it was to prove that point. And for me, like the art wasn't really finished until someone bought it. Like I could have put
Hmm.
garbage in cubes, and like I just use type Helvetica on the front. It's very utilitarian. It says exactly what it is. Doesn't fluff it too much.
Yeah.
And it was just like, all right, let me see if I could do this. And so, and yeah, I think it only works because it's New York. New York is known for being disgusting, and like the garbage on our streets is a part of the character of the city. It wouldn't be
Yeah.
New York if it was clean. And I also like over the years of one, the design of the cubes have gotten a lot better, but then also like I love that each piece of trash played a role in someone's life. And you can,
Hmm.
well, what are the stories of that person's New York experience? I find coffee cups with lipstick on the rims, or 9 times out of 10, when I find a parking ticket, it's ripped in half. So, someone saw that and was like, fuck this, and ripped it in half and threw it on the ground. And so for me, all of that, it's just like it's a cool part of New York. It's like definitely something people notice, and
Hmm.
if it was another city where it was like super clean or just isn't known for being disgusting, then it wouldn't be the same. It wouldn't have the same
Yeah,
appeal.
totally. Like, and it wouldn't really work for any other city.
No.
It's so strange. Like when you were doing it, where you're like unconsciously aware, like hyper aware of like good trash.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like, well, there's stuff like I love finding like family photos. I
Mm.
love handwritten notes. Like I found a whole bunch of family photos from like the '60s. They were like black and white, almost like a photo booth strip. But
Wow, cool.
they were all different family photos, and it was like a kid on a horse and a kid sitting on the wing of a plane, and families smiling, and they were just like in a trash bag on the side of
Oh,
like West
wow.
Fourth Street, and it's something had ripped it open, and they were all over the street, and I was like, this is so sad because these are like such beautiful memories, and so to be able to take those and put them into cubes, uh, was really cool. And to find like birthday cards written by little kids and Valentines and stuff like that was just like
Yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah.
nice to have the humanity be a part of it. And so
No, totally.
and for me, it's like I want to find a centerpiece for each one. So whether that's a Greek coffee cup or a beer can or something, so I find something
Yeah,
that's like about 4.5 inches tall. I don't know what the centimeters are on that,
yeah,
but uh, find something around that size I can crunch in there, and then I find other elements to go around it. So whether that's caution tape or cigarette butts or Metro cards, to kind of round out the composition. So yeah, I'm always when I see stuff, I'm like, oh, that'd be perfect. Oh, that's cool. That's yeah, a little roll of duct tape. I know I can like squish that and fit that in. That looks good. Yeah.
yeah. That's cool.
Yeah.
Like, I wonder if, like, with everyone's obsession with hype brands like Supreme and that kind of shit, where people are paying like $500 for a fucking brick with a
Uh
logo
huh.
on it. Like, I wonder if it would be like even more successful now.
Uh,
You know what I mean? Like,
totally.
because like the kind of hype behind it.
Well, I was like, well, if I do a limited drop, what can I do to like play into the culture now? Because like at the time when I came up with it, like Beanie Babies were really popular, and
Yeah.
I thought it was so ridiculous that they were worth
Oh,
so
you're
much
taking me
because
back.
people said they were limited, and so like part of me numbering things was kind of taking the piss out of that. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, this is extra collectible now. Uh, but then it works, So
Yeah,
and so
totally.
well, I was like, if I do this new
Well,
edition,
Supreme
can
have
you,
made a company off of it, so
yeah, well, I was like, if I do this new edition, can you only get it if you wait in line outside of Supreme? But then I'll be selling them on the street, just like or across the street from Supreme. There's definitely some ways I
there
could
you
probably
go.
play into that. Yeah,
Or just like, sure somebody at Supreme would think it's an amazing idea and probably just want
just
to
do a
kind of
collab.
collab.
Yeah, I have a friend
Yeah.
who works over there, so maybe I'll float it to him.
All right. Like, one thing I've always wondered when I saw it, like, at the end of the day, you technically are cleaning up the streets as well as making money.
Yeah.
Like, has like, I don't know what you'd call it over there, like, the council or like the city of New York, has like ever like gotten in touch to like try and buy the business?
No, they haven't. Which yeah.
Because like you could imagine, like, say if like they actually employed a whole host of people to do it, and pretty much on every street corner in New York you had these little cubes, they would sell like fucking crazy probably.
You would
Because
think,
people, like you say,
but
have that kind of.
if they're not selling like crazy for me, they probably won't. And I artistically arrange it. They probably won't sell like crazy if there's because they wouldn't be able to sell them for as much, and so they would be
No,
cheaper.
true.
And is it worth the effort putting in and all that stuff? And then you're like,
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
people are giving me shit because like the you know environmental stuff, like this is a plastic box and this doesn't decompose, and I'm like, it's not
Uh,
supposed to decompose, and it's supposed to. You're not supposed to throw it away. You're supposed to have it on your mantle or your desk or whatever. And so, for me, it's not an environmental statement. It's not any of that stuff, which is all the more relevant now. But that's not the goal
mm,
of it. The goal was to like just prove that packaging mattered, and I could sell someone something
I
they
think you
obviously didn't
certainly
want.
proved
You
that.
know.
Yeah, you certainly proved that. That's for certain.
Thank you.
Uh, I also just like want to touch on your own podcast, Overshare,
Yeah.
where you sit down with a variety of creatives as well and chat about their highlights as well as the tough times and things like that. And it's like a super kind of candid podcast, which is what I really like about it. Like, what have been some of the kind of biggest things you've learned from doing a podcast? Like, be it about like from one of your guests or whether
Hmm.
it's just about yourself.
Well, for me, it's been like my own therapy. I started it, I guess, 3 years ago, maybe 3.5 years ago. because I get tired of going to conferences and seeing people only talk about the highlights. And I
Yeah.
can't relate to someone's amazing illustration skills, but I can relate to the struggle it takes to do what they do, you know? So I wanted to, and you look at people's Instagrams at the time, and still it's like all perfectly curated. And I was just like
Mm.
over that shit. And so I wanted to have some real, honest conversations that was having already with my friends. But how can I have that with people, I admire and learn from them? So I started doing that. And for me, I think some of the biggest takeaways, especially this season, there's been a lot of themes. We had an episode come out today with this doctor. She calls herself a mad scientist, but Dr. Vivian Ming, who does AI and robotics, and
Oh wow.
but basically like trying to come up with ways to replace humans. And just been reassuring that the thing that she doesn't think that robots will replace anytime soon, or AI will replace anytime soon, is creativity.
Mm.
And so I was like, cool, we still have jobs, great. Um,
We'll be fine. Fuck you all.
but I think the biggest thing has been about adaptability. And so like
Mm.
last week's episode was with this guy who ran across, him and his two teammates were the first to run across the entire Sahara Desert. And they ran,
Oh my god.
it's insane. Like you're like, that's not possible. And so they ran across the Sahara. They basically ran 2 marathons a day for 111 straight days.
Oh my god. That sounds
There's a
horrific.
documentary done about it where Matt Damon produced it and is the narrator, and Hans Zimmer did the music for it. So that it's called "Running the Sahara." So that's fascinating, but it's about our own limitations that we put on ourselves.
Mm.
What we think is capable, in like this kind of self-limiting mindset, and how once you get rid of that, your potential is completely limitless. And I saw Charlie speak at a conference a little over a year ago, and at the end, I was like, I never thought I could run a marathon. And I spoke to him. I was like, this inspired me. I'm going to register for a half marathon and see if I can do it. And I'm someone who runs like 2 miles 3 or 4 times a year because I felt guilty for not exercising. And then last year I ran a half marathon, and it was just like so amazing to like give yourself a reason to be proud of yourself.
Yeah.
And so I talked to Charlie, and the episode came out last week. And of course, I committed to running a marathon at the end of the day. He's like, "Of course you can do it." And so, but it is like we have all these things we tell ourselves, and I don't know if they come from ourselves or they come from our environment and how we grew up and who we grew up with, or who we surround ourselves with now. But it's so important to surround yourself with people who think you're capable of more than you realize you're capable of, and
Yeah.
tell you that, and then you becoming that person for yourself, and just realizing like all of these things that I take as what I can or can't do is all just made up. and
Mm.
and so like what can we actually make happen when we allow ourselves to dream bigger and surround ourselves with people who dream bigger. And so that's and then Charlie said it's not what happens to you, it's what you do about it. And that's the
Yeah.
biggest part. And so I think now, especially, I think our expectations of who we are or what we do or where our careers are heading have all been rocked. And what do we do now? And how do we make the most of it, and how do we adapt? And I think as creative people, our adaptability is one of our trademarks. And so this is a time for us, this is a time for us to use our superpowers for good, and to rethink our careers, to rethink marketing, to rethink our industries and how people work. There's just so much opportunity now, to get out of our habits and shake things up, and
Yeah.
maybe see different ways of looking at who we are and what we can do.
That's awesome. Like I had a like kind of similar conversation with a guest that's been on the show called Luke Robertson and his wife Haley Robertson, who the Hazel, sorry, not Haley, who are both explorers, but he's the youngest, or the youngest Brit, and the only Scot to kind of do an unassisted trek to the South Pole,
Oh wow.
or something like that.
Yeah.
I'll have to double check my facts there, but like he kind of talks about some of the same kind of the stories about the adaptability. You kind of tell yourself all these things, and then like so much of it is mind over matter.
Hmm.
Um, and just get kind of like anything, like get a very simple strategy in place, and of course you'll be able to run a marathon. It's not like it's just like you put all these kind of instantly. We're very good at putting barriers up for ourselves.
Hmm.
It's about kind of breaking them down.
Yeah,
But
and it's been nice just hearing that time and time again this season, where it's
mm,
just like, oh, it's true, and it's you can overcome it, and so it's just allowing yourself the time and space to think of yourself differently, and think of your life and your career differently,
yeah, yeah.
and taking the time
What
to
are
think, am I
some?
actually happy? Is this what I want to be doing? Like, I have so many friends where I was like, hey, how's freelance going? They're like, oh, I'm loving it. Cool. I'm like, well, do you want to be a creative director, like at an agency or run an agency at some point? And they're like, some of them, not all of them, but some of them have been like, yeah. And I'm like, we're going to have to take a job soon, because, just freelancing a bunch, not producing much, and just working on a bunch of pitches is not helping you grow your portfolio for that role. And like, you're
Yeah,
very quickly going to become irrelevant, so you have to take a job and actually make real shit again, or
yeah, yeah,
or
yeah.
start doing more personal projects, which has basically got me. That New York City Garbage project got me every single job I've ever gotten, and I've been told that. They're like, yeah, like apples to apples. If looking at someone else's portfolio to yours, so as far as ad work, they're like, oh yeah, you could do this, this, and this. But if I have to pick someone, I'm going to pick the guy who went and like had the idea to sell garbage and then made a bunch of money doing that, because it shows enthusiasm, it shows initiative, it shows passion, which you can't teach people.
No,
And so, like,
ticks all the right
and I think
boxes.
now is the perfect time for people doing personal projects. The press is so desperate for good stories and stories to make people happy, and you don't necessarily need to do something
Mm,
that is COVID focused. But we have the benefit right now, like as creatives, we kind of thrive on being able to connect with others, and right now we can connect with a shared experience with everyone in the world. And what can you do, and how can you go and bring joy to people, and or solve a problem? And I just think it's a huge opportunity right now to do that, if you have the mind space to. And there is this whole other backlash of people being like, you have all this time now, you can do so much. And it's a really sad, traumatic time, and you might not be able to do anything right now, and that's okay too. But
yeah.
if you have the capacity to do it, and you have the enthusiasm to make something, with the constraints that you're being given of being home and being isolated and all that, and you can make something out of it, um, people are gonna people are gonna see that and very easily be able to connect with it.
Hmm. I was just wondering, like, through all your side projects and the many things that you've got going on, whether it's working or not working or speaking gigs or whatever, like, have you ever suffered from just total burnout at all? That you kind of hinted at it earlier, and if so, like, how do you kind of personally overcome
Well,
burnout?
well, I got totally burnt out with my last full time job, and I just had to be done. Like 20 hours a day, 7 days a week was just like, it was too much, for 2 months, and I was just like, all right, I need a break from this. And so I've been able to manage that burnout pretty well, especially when I was like freelance, because I was a
Mm.
generally a pretty lazy freelancer. In hindsight, I should have freelanced a lot more, but I would like freelance for a month so I could take 2 months off, and then I would go and like take another gig for 2 months, and then take another month off, and
Mm.
it's always about that balance for me. Now, with working, not working, and having that job, working full time on that, I think there are times that I got burnt out. It was because Adam and I realized, we're like, oh, we're not creating enough. Like, it's what we do and what we're good at, and we're not really using our skills to the best of our abilities to help the company. We were trying to take
Mm.
on roles and learn skills to be a CEO and to be a CCO, and to just keep the lights on. Like, it's so easy, and Adam describes it as like, when you're starting your own business, it's just like being in a foxhole and shooting whatever's closest to you. And and you're just trying to survive. And I think it wasn't until we were able to hire some help, and then acknowledge that's what we were doing, where we could go and say, all right, well, what do we actually want to be doing?
Yeah.
What are our priorities? What would make us happy? What would make us feel fulfilled? When are the times in the past year that we've felt best in our jobs, and most necessary and successful? Okay, how do we facilitate more of that? And so I've been working with a career coach for the past almost a year, and a management coach, and that's been totally life changing. uh,
Oh wow, nice.
and just being able to go like, all right, well, yeah, where am I heading, and what do I want to be doing?
Mm.
And so, it's helped me identify my own personal mission, which is to do whatever I can to make creatives feel less alone, And that's been super fulfilling. And so it went from overshare and doing that,
Mm.
which I probably wouldn't have been able to do 5 or 6 years ago. It wasn't until I started going to Al-Anon meetings, which is for like children and friends and family members of alcoholics, where I was actually able to feel feelings for the first time in 36 years. And
Wow.
and so is that stuff where it just really, and started going to therapy on my own and started unlocking things in me that then allowed me to do and give back, because I feel now that I actually feel feelings, and have that ability, I want to help other people do that. And all of the things that I've learned from my career and the things I've learned to let go of, and let go of controlling everything, let go of, I'll be happy when this happens, I'll be happy if this happens,
Yeah, yeah.
because
That's so
it's
important.
all about, like, it's so easy to be ambitious in this career path and the thing that we do, and put the blinders on until you get to that point, and then you get to that point and the goal line just moves again, and you spend all this time
Yeah.
focusing on where you're not and where you want to be, that you miss out on where everything that's great that's going on right now.
Yeah.
And letting go of like comparing yourself to others, and like the fact that like Instagram is a fucking scorecard for creativity now, and you could be doing amazing work but you have 500 followers and someone else has 5,000 or 50,000 doing something similar, and you're always going to feel like you're doing a shitty job, and that's like fucked up, and it's like fuck that.
Yep.
So all of that stuff is just really, it's really helped me. And I also started a creative support group, which is very similar to Al-Anon setup, where we sit around in a circle and we talk about what we're struggling with right now. And
Oh,
but we
nice.
do it on a theme. So like last week was about resiliency, and this week I think, or next week, is about boundaries. And so we just talk about that. And when you realize, is like, oh, we're not as fucked up and special as we think we are.
Yeah.
Like, we're all going through the same shit, and it's just like we need to talk about it and know that it's okay. And especially because like the World Health Organization says the leading cause of ill health and disability in the world is depression. And I feel like
Mhm.
creative people are probably more susceptible to that than most. Like, we ride those highs and lows in the creative process, and we put so much of our own self-worth in the work that we create, and our value in the work that we create, and then give and put out into the world, and then just hope people accept it and like it, or
Yeah, of
or or
course.
not, and then our all of our, and wait for that validation, which is, I get, and it's like very hard to disconnect yourself from your work. But once you're able to do that a bit, uh, there's a lot of freedom in that. Like someone, Amelie Lamont, is a writer and a creative on the site, and she said in a meeting a few weeks ago that, like, it's not about, who we are, what we do. A lot of us say, hey, I'm a designer, I'm an illustrator, I'm a director, but maybe we should be saying, I do design,
Yeah.
I direct, I do illustration, because it's a way of uncoupling your identity with the thing that you do,
Yeah.
which has been
Well,
really
that
helpful to
seems like
me.
a
Yeah.
no, it's just like a really kinda I think a really powerful message that a lot of creatives actually need to hear. Like that's one thing I've learned from doing the podcast is, not like it's a very fun job. I'm not trying to, and especially when you hear fucking horror stories of people working on like key workers and
Yeah,
nurses and doctors and all that kind of shit at the moment, and
and we can doodle.
I
Yeah.
wouldn't. Yeah, like yeah. I suppose I do technically color in for a living, but
Dad was right.
you know, yeah, but within our realm anyway, like not taking that into consideration, just thinking about our kind of different kind of industries and things like that. I think a lot of people do assume it's just like all sunshine and rainbows, and it is a lot of fun, and the fun doesn't ever stop. And I'd say it's less like that for just speaking from my experience, it's less like that in product, but like in agencies, it is a massive up and down, up and down, up and down, and I don't think people really talk about it enough that are in the industry. So
Hmm.
it was just like like the idea of like that kind of support group. I think that sounds amazing. Like um, should get one started over here.
Yeah. Well.
But it's just kind of been great. Like there's been a couple of people that like a couple of guests that have been on the show have kind of started their own kind of like creative industry support groups during this kind of COVID-19
Hmm.
situation stuff. And it's just so great to see like everyone kind of come together.
Yeah.
Um, and see how kind of strong everyone is together and how the support network is.
Yeah, it makes all the difference too. And it's like it's using what we have to help others, and I think that's when,
Mm.
if you're in service of something greater than yourself, you're going to be a lot happier. And that's like uh, today's episode with on Overshare with Vivian Ming is all about that, about people who live with purpose, actually make more money. They live happier lives and they walk faster when they're 65. Like it's all been
Wow.
researched and scientifically proven. But it's
Holy
but
shit.
like your career is not your purpose. Your purpose is something that you would be willing to sacrifice for. You would be willing to
Yeah.
pay money to do because it's that important to you. And so I
Yeah.
think if we're able to find that purpose, and and at working there's a piece of advice my dad gave me many years ago, which I thought was his, which I thought was brilliant, but he actually just plagiarized it from someone else. An
He
idea.
could be creative.
Yeah, it's an interview, or it's an idea from Zig Ziglar, who's a author and speaker. But it's basically help enough other people get what you want, and you'll always get. Or sorry, help enough other people get what they want, and you'll always get what you want.
Yeah.
And that's a way I've tried to live my life and my career. And it's important for us at Working Not Working. It's like, let's just take care of other people. Let's help them find the jobs they want. Let's help them, not feel as alone in this journey of creativity, or get past the creative insecurity, and everything will work out for us. And we don't really need to worry about it. It's like, let's just solve other people's problems and do our best, and we'll be all right.
Yeah. Well, what a perfect way to wrap up the show. Justin, this has been absolutely awesome. I really appreciate you taking the time to come on the show. And where can people keep up to date with everything that you're up to, working, not working, Justin, and all sorts, side
Yeah.
projects?
Well, you can follow me on Instagram. It's at Justin Gignac, Gignac. Working Not Working is at W Not W, and Overshare is at Overshare Talks. And yeah, I basically push everything on either one of those three. But yeah, if you're a creative person and you like to hire amazing creative people, you should definitely join us at Working Not Working. And we would love to have you.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, and also make sure to check out Overshare because it is a great podcast.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
And no worries, mate. It's been, and like I keep saying to everyone who I'm doing remote podcasts to, next time, hopefully we can do one face to face.
Yeah, that would be, I cannot wait till that day comes.
Yeah. Cheers, man.
Gregor, thank you so
So
much.
to wrap,
Yeah.
no worries, anytime. So to wrap up, folks, head over to your favorite podcast platform and hit subscribe. When you're there, don't forget to leave a review or share the show with any kind of friends or colleagues. And as always, please feel free to get in touch if you've got a question for an upcoming guest or just a random question you'd like to ask. Then email me on methodinthemadnesspodcast@gmail.com. And that's it from us here. So thank you very much for listening. And I hope you found some method in the madness.